Now, whether you follow politics or not, whether you admire certain leaders or criticize them, it doesn't matter for what I'm about to say. Because today, I am not here to talk about politics. I am here to talk about you. You see, that headline is more than a story about politicians. It is a mirror, a parable, a warning, and a lesson about the invisible war that builds or breaks your destiny. Because the truth is this: every single day, you are holding court in your own mind. Every single day, you are the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, and the accused. And tragically, most people, most dreamers, most would-be achievers, lose that case before they even begin. They build arguments against themselves so strong that they collapse under their own weight. And if I'm being honest with you, that right there is really idiotic. The case you build against yourself, let's pause for a moment. Imagine walking into a courtroom where the case being argued is your future, the stakes, everything, your dreams, your financial freedom, your happiness, your legacy. But when the judge calls the room to order, you realize something shocking. The prosecutor standing up to argue against your success is you. Yes, you. The very person who should be your greatest defender, your strongest advocate, the one championing your cause, has suddenly turned into your own accuser. You know how it sounds. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the connections. I've failed before. I'll fail again. People like me don't get opportunities like that. It's too late for me. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm not the kind of person who becomes great. Every one of those thoughts is evidence submitted into the record of your destiny. And every time you repeat them, you strengthen the case against yourself. And then, to make it worse, you call witnesses. You invite the memory of your past mistakes to take the stand. You summon the opinions of your critics. You parade the harsh words of doubters as if they are sworn testimony. And before long, you've convinced yourself the jury must be right. I am guilty of being unworthy of success. This is the invisible war. Not against Lisa Cook, not against Trump, not against Democrats or Republicans, not against your neighbor or your coworker. The invisible war is against yourself. And if you do not learn to fight it, it will build or break your destiny. The idiocy of self-sabotage, when I saw that headline, this right here is really idiotic. It struck me. Because self-sabotage is exactly that: idiotic, senseless, self-destructive. And yet it's one of the most common human habits. We humans are experts at fighting battles that don't exist. We invent enemies where none exist. We build cases against ourselves that no jury should ever believe. Think about it. How many times have you argued yourself out of trying? How many times have you convinced yourself not to apply, not to ask, not to pursue, not to dare, because you believe the story of your own unworthiness? You see, failure is not always the result of what the world does to you. Often, it is the result of what you do to yourself. You fight invisible wars in your head, wars of doubt, wars of fear, wars of limitation. And while you are busy losing those inner battles, the world outside marches on. Opportunities pass. Time slips away, and dreams quietly wither. My friend, if you remember nothing else from today, remember this: the war inside you is more important than any war outside you. The invisible war of the mind. Let me show you how this invisible war works. There are 3 battlefields where it is fought. The battlefield of belief. Here is where you decide whether you believe in your potential or believe in your limitations. It's the place where you either plant seeds of possibility or bury your future under weeds of doubt. The battlefield of discipline. This is where you choose daily habits, where you either rise early and act with purpose, or you sleep in and surrender to distraction. Here is where you either march toward your vision or let procrastination drag you backward. The battlefield of persistence. Here is where you either hold the line when things get hard or wave the white flag. Every breakthrough in history was born because someone refused to retreat when the invisible war was fiercest. On each of these battlefields, you must fight. And on each, the real enemy is not them, not politicians, not the economy, not your circumstances. The real enemy is the case you build against yourself. The mindset of winners now. Let me contrast this with the mindset of those who win. Winners also face fear. Winners also hear the whispers of doubt. Winners also encounter setbacks. But here's the difference: they refuse to prosecute themselves. Instead of building a case against themselves, they build a case for themselves. They remind the jury of their mind: I am capable. I may not know everything, but I can learn. I may have failed, but I am wiser because of it. I deserve to try. I deserve to win. I will not sabotage my own destiny. This is not arrogance. This is survival. Because if you don't believe in yourself, who will? If you don't defend your own destiny, who will argue your case? Building your case for greatness. So let me ask you, right now, what case are you building? When you think about your future, do you gather evidence of why you can succeed or why you can't? Let's get practical. Here are 3 steps to start building your case for greatness. Rewrite the evidence. Stop presenting your failures as proof you're unworthy. Instead, reframe them as lessons. If you failed, it means you tried. If you stumbled, it means you moved. Every mistake is not evidence against you. It is evidence that you are still in the fight. Call new witnesses. Who testifies in your mental courtroom? If it's critics and doubters, dismiss them. Instead, summon voices of encouragement. Call on mentors, books, speeches, stories of people who rose from nothing. Let their words strengthen your defense. Cross-examine your fears. Fear is often a liar. When fear says you'll fail, ask, where is the proof? When fear says you're not good enough, demand, according to whom? Most of the time, fear's evidence crumbles under questioning. Do these 3 things consistently, and you will begin to win the invisible war. Why this matters now, my friend, I want you to grasp the urgency of this. We live in a time where the external noise is deafening. Politics, media, division, uncertainty. But if you lose focus on the invisible war inside, none of that will matter, because your destiny will already have collapsed in the courtroom of your mind. But if you win this war, if you defend your greatness, if you stand up and declare yourself worthy, if you refuse to believe the idiotic lies of doubt, then no politician, no economy, no external force can stop you. Because destiny is not decided in Washington. Destiny is not decided by headlines. Destiny is not decided in the courts of men. Destiny is decided in the court of your own mind. Closing challenge. So the next time you are tempted to doubt yourself, remember that headline. This right here is really idiotic. Let it remind you of the idiocy of self-sabotage. Let it be a warning never to argue against your own potential. Instead, build your case for greatness. Gather your evidence. Call your witnesses. Cross-examine your fears, and then deliver your closing statement with conviction. I am capable. I am worthy. I will not lose the invisible war. My destiny will not break. My destiny will be built. Because in the end, that is the only verdict that matters. I want you to imagine something. Imagine walking into a courtroom. You feel the weight of silence in the room. You hear the creak of wooden benches, the shuffle of papers, the commanding voice of the judge as they call the court to order. But this is not an ordinary courtroom. This is not about laws, politics, or crimes committed in society. No, this courtroom is far more important, far more personal, because this courtroom is inside of you. It is the courtroom of your mind. And here's the truth: every single day, trials are being held in that courtroom. Every single day, arguments are being made. Every single day, a verdict is handed down. And those verdicts determine whether you rise or fall, whether you try or quit, whether you live small or live great. In the courtroom of your mind, you are always on trial. And the case being argued is the case of your destiny. The judge, the jury, and the accused now, what makes this courtroom so fascinating, so powerful, so dangerous, is that you play every role in it. You are the judge, the one who declares the final verdict. You are the jury, swayed by the arguments and deciding guilt or innocence. You are the defense attorney meant to argue in your favor. You are the prosecutor, quick to point out flaws and failures. And tragically, you are also the accused, the one whose entire future hangs in the balance. Think about that for a moment. You are arguing against yourself, deciding about yourself, and sentencing yourself, all in the privacy of your own thoughts. And most people never even realize it's happening. The invisible trials. So what are the charges that are brought against you in this courtroom of the mind? They often sound like this: you are not smart enough. You are not talented enough. You don't have the right background. You failed before, and you'll fail again. People like you don't make it. You're too old. You're too young. It's already too late. These are the accusations. They are whispered by fear. They are shouted by insecurity. They are repeated endlessly by memory. And as you hear them, the jury in your mind begins to nod. The judge looks over the evidence, and unless you rise up to defend yourself, the verdict is almost always the same: guilty of unworthiness. And once that verdict is stamped, sealed, and declared, your actions follow it. You quit before you begin. You hesitate before you try. You hold back when you should leap. You live small when you were meant to live great. The prosecutor of doubt in every trial, there is a prosecutor. In your mental courtroom, the prosecutor's name is doubt. Doubt is relentless. Doubt doesn't need proof. It only needs suggestion. It twists your memories. It exaggerates your failures. It calls witnesses who were never credible to begin with. Doubt points to your past mistakes and says, see, that's who you are. Doubt drags in other people's criticisms and says, look, even they believe you're not good enough. Doubt waves a hand toward your fears and says, this is your future. It will always look like this. And here's the trick doubt argues with such confidence, such authority, that most people mistake it for truth. But it is not truth. It is simply a lawyer with a silver tongue. And unless you challenge it, it will win the case every time. The weak defense. Now let's talk about the defense attorney in your mind. That role should be played by you. The side of you that believes in your greatness, your potential, your destiny. But here's the tragedy for most people. That defense attorney is underpaid, underprepared, and overpowered. When doubt shouts, the defense whispers. When doubt presents a thick folder of past failures, the defense shows up with a single crumpled note of half-belief. When doubt brings witnesses by the dozen, the defense struggles to find even one. Why? Because most people spend more time preparing the case against themselves than the case for themselves. They memorize their flaws. They rehearse their mistakes. They collect the opinions of critics like trophies. But they never build the file of their victories. They never record their growth. They never bring forward the evidence of their resilience, their progress, their potential. So the defense is weak, not because the evidence isn't there, but because it was never gathered. The jury of your subconscious, and who decides the verdict in this trial? The jury. In the courtroom of your mind, the jury is your subconscious. It listens. It observes. It weighs the arguments. And then it decides how you will act, how you will feel, and what you will believe. Here's the danger. The jury does not know what is true or false. It only knows what is repeated, what is emphasized, what is presented with conviction. If doubt argues its case day after day, if fear presents its evidence over and over, if insecurity takes the stand again and again, then the jury will side with them. It will conclude that you are guilty of unworthiness, guilty of incapability, guilty of failure. But if the defense learns to argue with passion, if belief gathers its witnesses, if confidence presents undeniable evidence, the jury can be swayed. It can decide in your favor. The jury of your subconscious is not loyal to truth. It is loyal to repetition. Whatever side argues most often, most powerfully, most consistently, that is the side the jury will believe. The judge who hands down the sentence, finally, the judge. The judge in the courtroom of your mind is the part of you that makes decisions. The judge stamps the verdict into action. The judge decides, do you try or do you quit? Do you rise or do you retreat? Do you build or do you break? And the judge, like any judge, depends on the jury. The judge does not investigate the truth. The judge enforces the decision. If the jury says, you're guilty of being unworthy, then the judge passes the sentence. You don't apply. You don't ask. You don't risk. You don't act. If the jury says, you are worthy, you are capable, you are strong, then the judge issues a very different sentence. You rise, you build, you chase, you persist. The judge is simply the executor of the verdict, which means the entire destiny of your life depends on which side wins the case in the courtroom of your mind. Winning the trial, so how do you win? How do you ensure that in the courtroom of your mind, the verdict is in your favor? It begins with this truth. You must become the world's greatest defense attorney for yourself. You must learn to argue with passion for your own greatness. You must learn to gather evidence of your own worth. You must learn to silence the false witnesses of doubt and call to the stand the powerful testimony of belief, persistence, and resilience. Let me give you practical strategies. 1. Gather the evidence for your greatness. Stop building a thick file of your failures. Start building a thick file of your victories. Write down every achievement, no matter how small. Record every time you got back up after falling. Keep a journal of your progress. Collect compliments, feedback, reminders that you are growing, improving, rising. When doubt presents the file of your failures, slam down your file of victories. When fear tries to argue your past, present undeniable evidence of your strength. 2. Call the right witnesses in every courtroom. Witnesses matter. Who have you been calling to the stand? Critics, cynics, people who never built anything themselves. Stop calling them. They are not credible. Instead, call the voices of mentors, books, leaders, and examples of those who rose from nothing. Call the stories of those who refused to quit. Call the testimony of your own inner champion. Surround yourself with voices that speak life into your potential, not death into your dreams. 3. Cross-examine your fears. Fear will always try to testify. It will always take the stand. But when it does, cross-examine it. When fear says, you will fail, ask, where is the proof? When fear says, you're not good enough, ask, according to whom? When fear says, you don't have what it takes, ask, then how have I survived everything I've faced so far? Under cross-examination, fear usually crumbles. It is not a reliable witness. It is a liar, and liars collapse when confronted. 4. Rehearse the right arguments. Remember this, the jury believes what it hears most often, which means you must rehearse your arguments for greatness every day. Affirm your worth. Speak your vision. Declare your ability. Not once, not twice, but daily. Repetition is power. Repetition is persuasion. Repetition wins trials. If you let doubt argue every day while you only argue for yourself once a month, you will lose. But if you argue for your greatness every day, with passion, with persistence, with evidence, then the jury will side with you. 5. Deliver your closing argument with conviction. Every trial ends with a closing argument. In the courtroom of your mind, this is the moment when you look your own subconscious in the eye and declare, I am capable. I am worthy. I am strong. I will not quit. I will not surrender. I will not sabotage my destiny. I will rise. I will build. I will succeed. Do not whisper it. Do not mumble it. Declare it. Conviction moves the jury. Conviction convinces the judge. Conviction changes the verdict. The endless trials, here's something you must understand. The trial in the courtroom of your mind never ends. Every new dream brings a new case. Every new level of success summons new accusations. Every step forward awakens new doubts. You cannot win one trial and assume it's over. You must keep showing up. You must keep arguing. You must keep building your case. You must keep defending your destiny, because the prosecutor of doubt never sleeps. Fear never retires. Insecurity never stops filing motions. The war is endless. But so is your ability to rise. So is your capacity to argue. So is your power to win. If Napoleon Hill were alive today, standing before us in the turbulent year of 2025, he would not waste time debating party lines, red or blue, left or right. No, he would look deeper. He would see politics not simply as the management of government, but as a reflection of human nature, of leadership, of power, of the invisible laws of success and failure playing out on the grand stage of nations. And he would ask us a piercing question. What mindset creates a leader who rises to power? And what mindset destroys the foundation of freedom? Because politics, at its core, is not merely about policies, laws, or elections. Politics is about people. It is about the psychology of ambition, the discipline of leadership, the persistence of ideas, and the corruption of fear and greed. And whether you realize it or not, the same principles that govern your personal success govern the success, or the downfall, of entire nations. The politics of power, Hill once said that success begins with a definite chief aim, a clear purpose, backed by faith, persistence, and organized effort. Now consider the world of politics. What is government if not the collective pursuit of aims? What is leadership if not the organization of effort toward a common vision? But here is the hidden truth. When leaders lack a definite chief aim grounded in service, when their purpose becomes selfish, vague, or corrupted by greed, the system itself begins to decay. The machinery of democracy stalls, the economy falters, the people lose faith. For just as in the life of an individual, drifting destroys destiny. A person without purpose is a drifter, tossed by circumstance. A nation without purpose becomes the same, directionless, weak, and easily manipulated by louder voices. Politics reveals who understands this law. Leaders with vision shape the future. Leaders without it drift into scandal, corruption, and collapse. The invisible war of leadership, but there is another dimension. Politics is not only the art of leadership, it is also the battlefield of the invisible war. This is the war for control of the mind. You see it in every campaign. Candidates do not merely argue policies, they fight for belief, for faith, for the hearts of the people. They understand that persuasion is power, that shaping thought is more decisive than passing legislation. And so politics becomes a mirror of what Napoleon Hill taught long ago, that every great movement begins first in thought. Every law, every revolution, every economic reform is born first as an idea, whispered in the mind of one person who dares to believe it can be real. But beware, the invisible war cuts both ways. Just as truth can inspire, lies can enslave. Just as faith can build, fear can destroy. When leaders use fear, division, and hatred as their weapons, they poison the minds of their followers. And a poisoned mind cannot build freedom. It can only breed destruction. Corruption, the mindset that destroys nations. Napoleon Hill warned us of the enemies of success: fear, doubt, indecision, greed. Do these not also describe the enemies of freedom? Look at history. Every time a government collapses into tyranny, corruption, or economic ruin, the root cause is the same leaders who succumb to these invisible enemies. Fear of losing power makes them cling to control. Greed for wealth makes them sell out their people. Indecision paralyzes them in times of crisis. Doubt causes them to abandon bold vision for small compromises. And the people pay the price. But let us not point fingers only at politicians, for politics is a reflection of the people who elect, tolerate, or resist them. Corruption at the top is often a magnified image of corruption tolerated in everyday life. If citizens lack discipline, their leaders will reflect it. If citizens drift, their nation will drift with them. Therefore, Napoleon Hill on politics would not be a message to politicians alone. It would be a challenge to every individual: master yourself, or you will be mastered by others. The economy, a reflection of mindset. We talk much about the economy as if it were a mysterious beast, uncontrollable and unpredictable. But Hill would remind us that the economy is nothing more than organized human effort. Wealth, whether of individuals or nations, is created by ideas, faith, persistence, and cooperative action. When a nation encourages creativity, risk-taking, innovation, its economy flourishes. When it punishes ambition, stifles enterprise, and rewards dependency, its economy collapses. And so politics, in its truest form, should be the art of creating conditions where individuals can succeed, where opportunity is accessible, where the invisible laws of wealth creation are not blocked by artificial chains of bureaucracy, fear, or corruption. But here is the uncomfortable truth: many leaders do not understand wealth creation. They confuse redistribution with creation. They believe power comes from taking, not building. And so they drain the energy of their people rather than inspiring it. Napoleon Hill would tell us bluntly, no nation can rise higher than the mindset of its people and its leaders. An economy built on fear will always shrink. An economy built on faith, innovation, and persistence will expand beyond imagination. Freedom and responsibility. What is freedom? It is more than the right to vote. It is more than speech or assembly. Freedom, as Hill would define it, is the ability to think your own thoughts, to pursue your definite purpose, to rise by your own effort, and to reap the rewards of your labor. But freedom without responsibility is chaos, and herein lies the delicate balance of politics. For every right must be balanced with discipline. Every liberty must be paired with wisdom. Without self-discipline, citizens misuse freedom, and governments rush in to control them. Without vision, leaders misuse power, and liberty is lost. The invisible war of politics is this constant struggle between freedom and control, discipline and chaos, vision and corruption. The psychology of political success. Napoleon Hill studied the psychology of success in individuals. But those same principles apply to political success. Definite aim. Leaders who rise to greatness always have a clear vision for their nation. They know what they want, why they want it, and how to rally people behind it. Mastermind alliance. No leader succeeds alone. Political power is built through alliances, through organized effort, through the cooperation of brilliant minds. Faith. Every great movement begins with faith. Faith in the mission, faith in the people, faith that change is possible. Persistence. Political obstacles are relentless. Scandal, opposition, crisis, resistance. Only the persistent endure. Decision, indecision breeds weakness. Great leaders decide quickly, stand firmly, and adapt wisely. Now, compare this with failing politicians. They drift. They lack vision. They surround themselves not with a true mastermind group, but with flatterers and opportunists. They abandon faith when polls turn against them. They surrender persistence when the road gets rough. And so, like failing entrepreneurs, they fade into history as footnotes rather than architects. The urgency of today, we live in an era where politics dominates headlines, divides families, stirs outrage. But Napoleon Hill would caution us, do not be hypnotized by the noise. Look deeper. Ask yourself what principles are at play. What mindset is driving these leaders? What invisible war is being fought in the hearts of citizens? Because the danger today is not merely bad policies. The danger is mental slavery, when citizens surrender independent thought to media, to politicians, to propaganda. The moment you outsource your thinking, you have already lost your freedom. The invisible war of politics is the war for your mind. Win that and no leader can enslave you. Lose it and no law will ever protect you. Leadership that builds or breaks nations, politics at its highest calling is leadership. True leadership rooted in service. A leader's task is not to divide, but to unite. Not to exploit, but to uplift. Not to drift with opinion, but to anchor the nation in principle. But such leadership is rare. It requires courage, sacrifice, vision, faith. It requires the leader to win his or her own invisible war first. For how can you govern others if you cannot govern yourself? How can you inspire a nation if you are enslaved by fear, greed, or ego? Napoleon Hill would remind us that leadership is not about titles or offices. It is about influence, example, and the power to awaken greatness in others. Every citizen has this potential. Every parent, teacher, entrepreneur, artist, activist, each is a leader in their sphere. Politics is merely leadership writ large. And so the destiny of nations depends not on who wins the next election, but on how many individuals embrace true leadership within their own lives, ladies and gentlemen, visionaries, dreamers, and those quietly wrestling with the future, hidden inside their hearts. I want to talk to you today about something so powerful that it will determine the direction of your life long before talent, long before opportunity, long before connections, and long before circumstances line themselves in your favor. I want to talk about belief, and not belief in the abstract, not belief in vague ideas floating somewhere above the clouds. No, I want to talk about belief as the greatest battlefield you will ever step foot on. Because make no mistake, belief is not passive. Belief is war. Every single day there is a conflict raging inside of you, a war between the vision of who you could be and the shadow of who you fear you are, between the voice that whispers possibility and the one that screams limitation, between the image of your destiny and the memory of your disappointments. This war is not fought with weapons you can hold. It is fought with thoughts, with attitudes, with convictions. It is fought in the silence of your own mind, and the outcome of this war, whether you conquer or surrender, decides everything else in your life. The battlefield defined, think about it, history's greatest victories and most tragic defeats were not born on the fields of combat or in the halls of politics. They were born in the private wars of belief. The Wright brothers believed man could fly when the world laughed. Edison believed light could be harnessed when darkness was all anyone knew. Mandela believed freedom could prevail even from the depths of prison. But how many countless others never rose, never invented, never liberated, never built, because they surrendered on the battlefield of belief before the world even saw their faces? Belief is not a luxury. Belief is not an accessory. Belief is the front line where your destiny is either secured or lost. The two armies on one side of this battlefield stand the forces of faith, conviction, vision, and resilience. On the other side stand the forces of fear, doubt, cynicism, and resignation. They are armies evenly matched, and they fight every single day for control of your thoughts. When you wake up in the morning, belief asks, what is possible for me today? Doubt sneers, nothing will change. When you dream of a bigger future, belief whispers, why not you? Doubt shouts, who do you think you are? When you take your first step, belief cheers. Keep going, you are closer than you think. Doubt mocks, turn back, you'll embarrass yourself. And in those moments, your mind becomes a war zone. Most people don't even realize this war is happening. They think their thoughts are simply reflections of reality. But no, your thoughts are the architects of reality. And whichever army you allow to win on this battlefield determines the world you create outside. Belief as builder, doubt as destroyer. Here's the secret: belief builds, doubt destroys. Belief lays foundations brick by brick for the world you want to create. It gives you the courage to start. It keeps you moving when nothing is guaranteed. It transforms obstacles into stepping stones and setbacks into strategies. But doubt bulldozes every foundation before the building can rise. Doubt convinces you to stop pouring concrete, to stop dreaming blueprints, to stop seeing possibilities. Doubt doesn't even wait for reality to reject you. It rejects you before reality ever has the chance. Belief is a builder. Doubt is a destroyer. And both are competing for control of your destiny right now. The first lie of doubt begins with a lie. And that lie is simple. You are not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not rich enough, not connected enough, not experienced enough, too young, too old, too late. It will shift into whatever voice it needs to take you down. But beneath every disguise, the message is always the same: you are not enough. And if you believe this lie, the battle is already lost. Because the moment you agree with doubt, you step off the battlefield and raise the white flag. You never launch the business. You never write the book. You never chase the dream. You never try to break free from the chains. But belief fights back with a different messages. I may not be everything I want to be yet, but I am enough to begin. I am enough to grow. I am enough to rise. Belief doesn't need all the answers to take the first step. Belief doesn't need certainty to march forward. Belief only needs one thing: conviction that progress is possible. Evidence vis. Imagination here is where most people get trapped. They think belief must be built on evidence. They wait until circumstances prove it's possible before they believe. But that's not how it works. Belief is not built on evidence. It is built on imagination. The evidence comes later. The Wright brothers didn't have evidence of flight. They had imagination of wings. Edison didn't have evidence of light. He had imagination of a bulb. Every innovator, every leader, every achiever began not with proof but with a picture. The evidence you crave only appears after you've believed long enough to create it. That means right now, whatever dream burns inside you, you don't need proof to pursue it. You need imagination strong enough to hold the line on the battlefield until proof catches up. The armor of belief, but how do you protect yourself when the battle rages fiercest? How do you keep belief alive when doubt surrounds you? You put on the armor of belief, and that armor is forged in 4 parts: words. The language you speak to yourself is your shield. Stop declaring defeat over your own life. Speak possibility. Speak power. Speak future, vision. See your destiny so vividly that it becomes more real than your current circumstances. Vision is the sword that cuts through fear. Action. Action proves belief. Every small step is a declaration that you will not surrender. Action is the rhythm of a soldier marching forward no matter the fire around them. Persistence. The war is never won in a single battle. Persistence is your armor against the long campaign. It is the refusal to leave the battlefield, no matter how many times you are knocked down. With these 4, belief becomes not just a fragile hope, but a fortress. The cost of surrender, I must warn you, the cost of losing this battle is devastating. Because when you surrender on the battlefield of belief, you don't just lose an idea, you lose a future. You lose the businesses never built, the books never written, the lives never touched, the wealth never created, the legacy never secured. You may think surrendering is safe because it spares you from failure. But what it truly does is rob you of the possibility of greatness. And that is the greatest failure of all. Belief creates leaders. Look at the world around you. The people who rise to power, who shape economies, who command nations, who influence millions. They are not always the smartest, the strongest, or the most prepared. But they are the ones who dared to believe when others laughed. Belief is the seed of leadership. Belief is the foundation of influence. Belief is the magnet that draws others to follow, because people don't follow facts alone. They follow conviction. Show me a leader who truly believes, and I will show you someone capable of moving history itself. Your private war. And now I turn this inward. What is your battlefield of belief? What wars are raging in your mind right now? Is it the belief that you can rise above your current financial struggles? Is it the belief that you can heal from the pain of your past? Is it the belief that you can break free from mediocrity and live with purpose? Whatever your war is, understand this: it is not small. It is not trivial. It is the defining battle of your destiny. Because if you believe you can, you set in motion forces that bend reality in your favor. And if you believe you cannot, you paralyze yourself before the first step. The call to arms, this is your call to arms. to pick up the shield of affirming words, the sword of vision, the boots of action, and the armor of persistence, to march onto the battlefield of belief every day and declare, I will not surrender my destiny to doubt. I will not hand over my future to fear. I will not let disbelief write the verdict of my life, because this war, this invisible inner, constant war, is the one that builds or breaks every destiny under the sun.